Good morning, kids. This is Grandma Freeman, and this morning I am prepping lunches for the week, and this is basically my lunch for the week. Classic minestrone soup, and these are some of the ingredients that I'm using. I'm going to use part of this cabbage. I'll shred it, and the recipe calls for 2 cups. So that's the cabbage. I'm using 2 onions, and those will be chopped. I'm using 2 celery stalks and 2 carrots, and those will be diced up. And I'm going to use the rest of this package of green beans. These are fresh, and I'm going to chop those up into 1/4 inch pieces, and 1 potato. And the recipe doesn't call for the garlic, but who does an Italian dish without garlic? So I'm using 3 cloves to make it rich and healthy. And then over here, I'm using 3 cups of a chicken bouillon broth, and I'm using this Knox's chicken bouillon. And for every 1.5 cups, you use 1 teaspoon of the bouillon. So I put 2 teaspoons of bouillon in 3 cups of boiling water there. And then that measuring cup needs to go over. I'm going to use 1/2 cup of dentalini pasta. The recipe that I have calls for 2 cups, and that's way too much. Because it swells up, and this is mainly a vegetable soup. But of course, you can use chicken or beef bouillon, or just broth. And then I'm using the recipe calls for, I think it's about 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, but I'm using cayenne pepper, so I'm just going to use a couple of pinches. And then salt. There is salt in the diced tomatoes, so I'm going to taste it before I salt it. Maybe I'll salt it after the vegetables are in, and I'll test it before I salt it. And then this is homegrown oregano that I dehydrated and bottled up last year, and so I've been using it. So I will use 1/4 teaspoon of that, and then 1 can of red gold petite diced tomatoes. And the recipe calls for chickpeas. You can use chickpeas, but I'm using cannelloni, and most of the recipes call for cannelloni beans. And then the recipe also calls for Parmesan cheese. I don't have any. I stopped buying it because I was always throwing out about 1/2 can after the expiration date. So I'm using this shredded cheese. This is a Mexican style blend. In case, I'm just going to sprinkle over the top of my bowl if I want some. And then to get me through it, I have a cup of coffee with creamer. So, and then also it calls for another 3 cups of water. I'm going to wait and see if I need it first, and just add as much as I think I want, because I'm not sure how much. This is going to give me a whole pot, a Dutch oven, big pot full of minestrone soup. And then over here, I'll just briefly go over this recipe. You can get a screenshot of this recipe here, of the ingredients. I've got a spot there. Let me see if I can get it out of the way. Oh, anyway, that's okay, did you get the screenshot? Sorry about that. And then this is combined cabbage, onions, carrots, of course, after they're prepared, celery, potato, broth, water, tomatoes, and their juice, oregano, salt, pepper into a large pot, bring to a boil. I also, at that time, it's best for me to add the dentalini pasta. They said to add it later, but it does take a while to cook, so I'm going to add it when I add the vegetables and the seasoning. And then at the end, let's see, and then you reduce it to the heat to simmer and cover, and you cook it at a simmer for 15 minutes, and then you stir in the green beans. It says zucchini, but I don't have any, so I'm going to skip that. And then you cook it until tender, about 8 minutes, and then you stir in the pasta and chickpeas and cook, stirring until heated through about 2 minutes longer, and then your soup is ready. And then you can top your bowls of soup with either Parmesan cheese or any other grated cheese. So this is going to be a very healthy food prep. This will be my lunches. If I'm hungry, I can add a sandwich to it, a chicken salad or a tuna fish sandwich. It'll be great. So I hope you like this recipe. Please like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Bye now.